I have journeyed across an ocean of stars to reach you. Your world has sheltered one of my citizens. He will look like you, but he is not one of you. To Kal-El, I say this. Surrender within 24 hours, or watch this world suffer the consequences.
I won't betray them.
You already have.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to what I'm going to be calling the Underrated series, where basically I talk about movies every week that I feel are either underrated, underseen, or underappreciated. And today I wanted to talk about Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, a movie that I absolutely adore. I know that polarized a lot of audience members, a lot of critics when it first came out. In my opinion, it has only gotten better with age, and it's still one of my favorite superhero movies of the past decade. What is it about this movie that I think is great that maybe some other people may have missed on the first go? And maybe not even missed on the first go, they just didn't appreciate it on the first time watching it. I mean, it happens to me all the time where I'll sit down, watch a movie, I'll have preconceived notions about what that movie should be, or expectations of what I thought that movie was going to give me, and based off that first viewing, it either let me down or was completely different than what I expected, and as a result, I left, not happy. In this case, I think that Man of Steel did a lot of things correct. Both the first half and the second half, because it is a movie split right down the middle, are excellent in their own right. It just depends on what type of movie you like more. Judging by the responses I've gotten both online and from friends in person over the years, is that it is very much a movie of two halves, in the sense that most people prefer the first half to the second half. So I'll go ahead and start with what I think is the best attribute of the movie, is the cast. I think the movie has a hell of a cast. I think Henry Cavill was an excellent Superman. I think Amy Adams, despite the red hair, was a great Lois Lane. I think Michael Shannon, a fantastic character actor, was great as General Zod, despite the one or two moments where he went full kabuki mode and totally overplayed the part. He's still fantastic. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. Lawrence Fishburne is great in everything he does. He's an asset to every movie he's been in, whether it's been, even in Apocalypse Now when he was 17 years old. You had Russell Crowe as Jor-El, not who I would have chosen, a hell of an actor, and no doubt about it. It's just, when I think about Jor-El, I don't really think of Russell Crowe. Diane Lane, Kevin Costner, the list just keeps going on of fantastic. Christopher Maloney, there's, I wouldn't call Christopher Maloney a fantastic actor, but the cast is loaded. When you start with the main piece of the cast, when you start with Henry Cavill, I think he was a great Superman. I know there's people that thought he didn't really bring much of a personality to it. He didn't bring the charm to it that Christopher Reeve brought to it, and to be fair, no one's going to compete with Christopher Reeve. When most of us think of Superman, that's who we think of. He was the real life Superman, so it's hard to get Christopher Reeve out of our heads. But that said, I think he did a great job. I think he did a great job of portraying a Superman in his earliest stages before he became the Man of Steel that we all, know from the comics and from, whatever you prefer, the cartoon series, the movies, whatever form of media you take your Superman in, the way we know him as the icon. Towards the end of the movie, he did become that. It's just, this is very much the Batman Begins of Superman, even down to Christopher Nolan producing and David Goyer writing the screenplay. He's not quite the savior that he is destined to become. He makes mistakes. There's bumps in his development. He has a lot of trauma in his life. Think about it. Kal-El, was basically put into a little, space pod, if you will, and sent to Earth. Lost his entire race of people. Lost his parents as a result. Grows up on a farm. Has abilities that the human mind can barely comprehend. So he has a lot to deal with. He overcame a lot as a kid, dealing with his powers and whatnot. So he's not going to be the cheeriest of people right away. You know, those people who wanted him to be, you know, to have the charisma and have, you know, the little quirkiness and to have the charm right away. It's just, he's not confident in his abilities yet. He's not confident in who he is as a person yet. And I think Cavill did a great job of showing and portraying that angst and that confusion and, you know, in parts even that anger and that resentment in the earlier parts of the movie. He's kind of like the reluctant hero when the movie first starts. I mean, especially in the scene with the oil derrick that is caught on fire when he's on the fishing boat and they get the distress signal. And, you know, he sees what's going on and, you know, he kind of disappears and he goes and he gets, you know, I believe it's both the firefighters and he gets the oil workers out of the room where they were trapped because the fire was blocking the door. He gets them out. They see him standing in the doorway. He's got flames all over him. It's a great shot. He gets them out, gets them onto the helicopter, and then a part of the derrick is about to collapse onto the helipad as the helicopter's about to take off, and he jumps up and he holds the, you know, beams up high, and he's like using every ounce of strength he has. That was a great moment to show the reluctant side of him. Obviously he wanted to save these people, but he didn't want to be seen by anybody. Obviously it was going to be impossible in that situation, but it's still a great moment where the movie kind of showcases what he can do with, you know, modern day CGI. And there's plenty of other great moments in the movie. His father dies, in this case in a tornado, and the whole reason why he dies in the tornado is because he didn't think the world was ready for Clark to show his abilities, because in that situation there was a lot of traffic jam, tornadoes coming over the overpass, a lot of people are rushing into safety, and Jonathan gets stuck in the car rescuing their dog. The dog makes it to safety, thank God. And when Clark's about to, you know, either sprint or fly over to go get him, he holds up his hand and tells him no. Now, I know that's a bone of contention for a lot of detractors of the movie. They say that Jonathan Kent would never do that. They say that Jonathan Kent would never prevent Clark from rescuing him, that Clark himself would not stop at the sight of his father's hand telling him no. That his love for his father would have superseded a hand up, and he would have gone there and rescued him, and to hell with the spectators. Personally, it doesn't bother me. This whole thing of Clark would never listen to his father might be a bit overblown. Remember earlier in that scene, Clark was getting into an argument with Jonathan, and he even said at the end of it, you know what, I don't even know why I'm listening to you. You're not my dad. You're just some guy that found me in a field. Clark realizes that, you know, no, what he said was stupid. What he said was out of pure anger. Like I said, he's got some bumps. He's not, you know, the perfect Superman that we know. But in that moment, he did listen to his father. He did lose his father as a result, his second father that he lost, even though he never knew Jor-El. It's a powerful moment in the movie. I get why people don't like it. I can completely understand it if you think that Superman would never let his father die. But at the end of the day, it was Jonathan's will, it was his father's will to die so that his son wouldn't be exposed. I could go on with great moments with Henry Cavill as Superman. Obviously, the physical dedication that he had is second to none. The bonus features on the Blu-ray show how hard he worked to maintain that physical, you know, that physical body that he had, that build. I mean, he's just completely jacked. I mean, he's even more jacked than Batman vs. Superman. But he really gave 110% to this character. And if you think he fell flat, or if you think he didn't have any charisma, you know, so be it. That's your opinion. You cannot deny that this man physically gave it his all to be the best version of Superman in that suit that he could be. And I want to talk about something right now. I mean, we can talk about other, you know, aspects of the movie that I love, and we will. But one thing right now that I'll just go ahead and get out of the way, that Man of Steel just could not top in terms of Superman 78's contribution to cinema, and that is John Williams' score. Hans Zimmer is a brilliant composer. I mean, I think everybody loves Hans Zimmer. The man has done so many iconic film scores in his career, it's not even funny. And the evolution of his music over the years has been, you know, fascinating to listen to. I mean, his scores for Gladiator, I mean, his Crimson Tide, The Rock, Inception, the Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, you can go on and on and on. He's just done incredible work But nothing can ever top what John Williams did for Superman 78. Between the opening titles, the opening credits music, they had the main Superman theme, which is it's untouchable. And some of the other pieces of music he uses, for example, the planet Krypton, where the camera's kind of panning over, the model of the planet Krypton, and he's got this beautiful piece of music that slowly, rises to a crescendo. Leaving Home, which is, again, this scene right here is probably my personal favorite scene in any superhero movie ever, just in terms of the emotional effect that it had on me when I first saw it, and that I still feel when I see it. I think all of us can relate to leaving home. I think all of us can relate to leaving our parents, even though they'll always be there, even though we can always go back to them whenever we want. That first time we leave home, it is a powerful moment, and it is, your first step to becoming an adult. And it is always sad. It's sad, and that is it's a beautiful scene, and it's just, for me, on an emotional resonance level, it's never been topped in any superhero movie. And then you have the piece of the Fortress of Solitude he did, where Clark gets to the Fortress of Solitude, and he puts the crystal in, and Jor-El, played by Marlon Brando, shows up, and then he takes him through time and space, and you see the beautiful, old school effects. And John Williams' score is just so transcendent. It's so gorgeous. It's such a beautiful and transporting piece of music. I can only imagine seeing that movie in the movie theater for the first time in 1978, and just sitting there in a full house and just looking at that screen and seeing the beautiful images coupled with John Williams' score. It must have been an overwhelmingly, powerful experience. So that is the one thing for me that Man of Steel can't touch. You can have all the modern day special effects in the world. You can have some brilliantly shot action sequences. You can have all the benefits of 2013, in terms of technology and what have you. That will never be topped by any Superman movie, and arguably any superhero movie ever, in terms of music bringing out an emotional response for me personally. So yeah, that is, and then of course I know there's some people saying like, well, wait a minute, you say that's the only thing that Superman 78 does better. Well, what about Christopher Reeve's Superman versus Henry Cavill? I'm not going to get into that. I love them both, equally. For different ways. I'm not going to compare one or the other. It's just that for me, the one thing that stands out more is the music of John Williams over Hans Zimmer. And that's not to say the music that Hans Zimmer did is underwhelming or anything like that. He provided a hell of a score, and I think it was very appropriate for the movie that Zack Snyder made. It's just that the John Williams score was a lot more resonant for me personally, and I'm pretty sure anybody would agree. Even the biggest fans of Man of Steel who agree that this movie is great would agree that John Williams' score is better than Hans Zimmer's, despite them being totally different and for two totally different movies. Anyway, now moving on to the movie itself, what I really love about the second half of the movie, in terms of the action sequences, in terms of the spectacle. Zack Snyder was in a bit of a rut when he made this movie. He started off with the Dawn of the Dead remake. I love the Dawn of the Dead remake. I know that a majority of people do love that movie. There's some people who say that it doesn't hold a candle to the original. That's fine. I love the movie. 300, where he basically exploded onto the map with that huge opening weekend back in 2007, and an amazing box office haul. Again, we still quote that movie to this day. Watchmen, in all honesty, probably my favorite Zack Snyder movie. I think he did the graphic novel total justice. That's another movie with a fantastic cast where each actor is, cast perfectly for their roles. But that was where the box office dip actually happened. Despite it having a solid opening weekend, it didn't have long legs. And despite the movie being brilliant, in my opinion, that's where he might have started to lose a little bit of his power at Warner Brothers in terms of carte blanche with his movies. Then Legend of the Guardians came out in 2010. Wonderful animated movie. But again, not the box office draw that Warner Brothers was hoping for. And then the disaster that was Sucker Punch. Again, a movie of incredible visual brilliance, visual beauty, up there with anything that we've seen before. It's just the movie itself is garbage. It's a nonsensical mess. That I guess, listen, Snyder is an incredible visual director, but when it comes to writing screenplays, to say that he's less than perfect, ugh. So he needed a hit badly, and Christopher Nolan was there to give him the reins for it. Now, Christopher Nolan was going to, I don't know if he was going to or if he did, but I remember when the trades came out back in the day. I believe this was late 2010, early 2011. He was talking to Ben Affleck about taking the director's job, which is kind of ironic because he went on to play Batman for Snyder and BVS. Matt Reeves, who I think Matt Reeves would have done a hell of a job, who's now directing the Batman with Robert Pattinson, ironically enough, all these years later, 10 years later. I believe Darren Aronofsky was even in there. Now, he wouldn't have been my first choice, but it still would have been interesting to see what he would have done with it. I just like we would have loved to have seen what Darren Aronofsky would have done with the Wolverine. James Mangold did a great job with the Wolverine, I think. But damn, what we would have done with a Darren Aronofsky R-rated Wolverine movie and an Aaron Aronofsky directed Man of Steel movie. I mean, it's definitely intriguing. But anyway, Snyder was chosen, and he did a hell of a job. And the second half of the movie is him working in pure Michael Bay mode. Michael Bay essentially threw down the gauntlet with the last act of Transformers Dark of the Moon during the Battle of Chicago, which is still, in my opinion, one of the best action sequences ever filmed. Filming actually in downtown Chicago. You close down streets, you close down whole blocks, practical explosions, brilliant CGI that seamlessly transitions throughout the movie, and just looks great. Even to this day, 9 years later, that sequence is still jaw-dropping. I still remember seeing it in 3D in 2011. It blew my mind. The Avengers in 2012 tried to up the ante and try to top it. It didn't. Despite the last third of Avengers being great and a lot of fun, and when we finally see the Avengers on screen for the first time together, it still doesn't. It doesn't quite top Dark of the Moon. Now, Man of Steel's last third, the Battle of Metropolis, is great, and it's overwhelming with brilliant spectacles. Filmed in Chicago, by the way, just like Dark of the Moon. But it doesn't quite come to Dark of the Moon's, scope, I guess you could say. I mean, it's still incredible and still epic. It's just it didn't quite reach that level. It's brilliant. But for me, the action sequence that stands apart from the Battle of Metropolis is the Battle of Smallville. Snyder was out of his mind when he shot that sequence. I mean, some shots that he got are just, oh my god. And then with Feora, handling all the soldiers like they were nothing, like they were like ants. I mean, just grabbing them and throwing them into each other and just pounding the shit out of them. And like the quick camera moves, the handheld cinematography by Amir Mokri. That sequence is just fucking fantastic. Again, you have the scale of the Battle of Metropolis, which is great, with the F-22 Raptors and the World Engine demolishing the city, and you got the World Engine on the other side of the planet in the Indian Ocean. So you got a lot of stuff going on, but still, that Battle of Metropolis, the Battle of Smallville, when we first see Superman do battle, was brilliant. I absolutely loved it, with all the product placement. Be damned with the Sears and IHOP and all that other shit. But the Battle of Metropolis was fantastic, and even though it doesn't really take place in the battle or the fight at the very end with General Zod, which for those of you who wanted a Dragon Ball Z live action movie that didn't suck, seeing Zod versus Kal-El in the Metropolis skyline, that's about as close as we're going to get to a live action Dragon Ball Z movie. But it has that moment where Superman is underneath the World Engine in the Indian Ocean, and he's standing there, and the thing is just pounding him into the ground. He just and then you've got the metallic tentacles that chase after him, which the CGI is stunning, by the way. That it's I mean, just you can't believe your eyes to see how realistic and photoreal those metal tentacles are as they're twirling around the flames and coming after him and grabbing him and throwing him underneath the beam of the world engine as it's terraforming the Earth. Talking about scores, this is where Hans Zimmer's score really comes into play here, and the sound comes into play, and the CGI, all of it comes together to make one perfect Superman moment. And when he's standing underneath there, and he's trying to put his fist up into the air, and he's going against that force of the world engine, and he's putting it up in the air, and he keeps pounding him down, and then he just uses every single ounce of strength in his body, and he just powers up straight up into the heart of the world engine and flies out the other end and destroys it, and basically saves not just Metropolis but the world essentially from Zod and terraforming the Earth into a new Krypton. It's my personal favorite modern day superhero moment in terms of a character coming into his own. A superhero really kind of becoming that superhero. But that for me, and that singular moment where Superman takes out the world engine and he collapses on the shoreline and he looks over to the horizon and the sun is just coming up over the clouds, and he kind of reaches out towards the sun and it kind of comes over his face, and he gets the radiation from the sun and it kind of recharges. I thought that was just a masterful filmmaking and a masterful piece of Superman right there. So I've waxed poetic about everything in this movie. I love I talked about the action sequences and how well Snyder shot them, and the CGI being fantastic. There's some people out there that say that, oh no, it goes on for too long, it's too chaotic, there's too much destruction, and yet these same people who complain about the destruction don't complain about the end of the Avengers, where basically they destroy New York City. I mean, if you're going to bitch about the death toll in Man of Steel, you got to bitch about the death toll in the Avengers. Sorry, it's just, I'm starting to see, in that moment, that's when I started to see the Marvel versus DC bias. It's like, oh, well, the Avengers, it's fine, because there was jokes being said, but, Man of Steel, no, that was too bleak, that was too dour, too many people died, no. Bullshit, fuck you. And then the first half, it's basically your Superman origin story told through flashbacks. And I know a wonderful moment that a lot of people love is when Clark is probably 7 or 8 years old, and he's in the classroom, and he first gets his his ability, I guess you could say, to hear everything going on around him, and to use his X-ray vision to see inside of people. He sees like the skeletal, parts of his classmates. He hears, cars going on outside, trains. He hears all their thoughts calling him a weirdo and a creep and all this stuff. And he basically freaks out and he runs down the corridor and he goes and hides in the closet. And while he's in the closet, he can hear all the kids outside the door, basically talking shit about him, like, oh man, what a weirdo, like, oh my god, he's such a creep, this, that, and the other thing. Finally, his mother comes in, and, he says, the world's too big, Mom, and she says, well, then make it small. Focus on my voice, pretend it's an island, and, swim towards it. And he basically sits there in the closet, and he, hones in on her voice, and isolates all the others. And in that moment, he learns to harness those abilities. And I thought that was a great moment, that his Earth mother, not Lara, his Earth mother was the one who was able to, help him hone some of his Kryptonian abilities in a very loving and tender way. It's a great moment. It's a beautiful moment. And then another moment that I love in the movie, that maybe not necessarily a moment, but just something that no one ever really talks about when it comes to the movie. In the scene when they're all on the school bus, they're probably like 12 or 13 or whatever the hell the case may be. And there's that redheaded bully that comes around and starts, talking shit to him and starts rustling him on the shoulder. The bus skids off the road and goes into the river. And all the kids are drowning. And finally, at the last moment, we see the bus start rising out of the water on the riverbank. And we see Clark, you know, kind of with both hands pushing the bus out of the river and onto the land. And he dives back into the water after one of the girls on the bus sees him. And then he pulls out the red-headed bully and puts him on the shoreline. Then, later on in the movie, we see him when he's, you know, in high school. He must be like, you know, 16, 17, whatever the case may be, being bullied by jocks. Right in front of his dad and someone else who's working on the farm. And then the jocks kind of look, and then they see that his dad is watching, so then they just leave. And Clark's on the ground. And then into frame comes, you know, somebody else, and a hand gets outstretched. And it's the red-headed bully who he rescued from drowning in the bus. And he's older, he's got the glasses and everything like that. And he just kind of has like a, you know, kind of a sour look, like, here, let me help you up. And I don't know why I've always liked that. You know, the fact that, you know, first of all, the kid never bullied him again, but he, you know, was there, and, you know, it's insinuated that he was his buddy going forward. That the gratitude was always there, and that, you know, he was, you know, out of all the people, you know, he was giving him shit on the bus when they were younger, and now he's, you know, kind of like his only buddy as a teenager. So I always loved that. But anyway, the movie is fantastic. You know, I could talk about this movie all day. I think I've talked about it enough. But for those of you who have seen it and haven't seen it since it came out, or maybe have seen it years ago and haven't given it another shot, and you didn't like it, or you thought it was underwhelming, or whatever the case may be, give it another shot. And, you know, if you don't like it again, you know, after the second shot, or you dislike it even more, you know, so be it. It's not, you know, movies aren't made for everybody. I don't think there's a movie out there that has universal love and acclaim. But who knows? There's a chance you might like it better. There's a chance that, you know, it might have grown on you in the years, you know, that have since passed. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I hope I haven't spoiled too much of it for you, but it's still very much definitely, you know, it's worth checking out for sure. But anyways, thanks for watching. And this has been the Underrated series. This has been Man of Steel, and see you next time. Thank you very much.